Hello everyone. In this video we are going to discuss some important exemptions. You would have seen the entries a number of times. I am not going to show you any entries. What we'll be doing is we'll try to recollect the entries which we have already learnt. Let's try to recollect as many entries as possible. I will tell you about most important sectors and just sit back, listen to all these entries. Now, these are the sectors which we are going to cover in this video. If you see the first sector, renting of immobile property. The first and foremost thing which you should understand is any renting of immobile property is liable to GST. But there are some rentings which are exempt from GST. What are those? First, renting of a residential dwelling for residential purpose. A residential house let out for residential purpose, GST is not applicable. Thereafter, we have hotel accommodation, inn, guest house or any such commercial place where the rent is up to rupees 1000 per day or equivalent. This was earlier below 1000. Now it is up to rupees 1000 per day or equivalent. So exactly 1000 per day GST would be exempted. Say suppose 12-hour rent is given to you. If 12-hour rent is given to you, convert it into the per day equivalent and then check whether it is exempt or taxable. And remember, in this you always check the value of supply. So if a hotel is charging me 1200 and giving me a discount of 300, 1200 minus 300 comes to 900. Then in that case, GST would not be applicable. Why? Value of supply does not include GST. Discount offered will always be subtracted. So if I consider the value after discount, that is the actual amount which I am paying, it's 900 and that's why GST would not be applicable. The third case is renting of a vacant land for agriculture. Now when you talk about agriculture is cultivation of plants including rearing of animals except rearing of horses. So poultry farming, animal husbandry, dairy farming, sericulture, pisciculture, horticulture, all these are considered as part of agriculture और इस पे GST नहीं लगेगा if a vacant land is given on rent for these particular services relating to agriculture. And remember one thing, what is not there for you is goods which are exempt from GST. What we have is only services which are exempt from GST. So this was about the first sector. What you might go wrong with? One, say suppose a charitable trust is taking a premise on rent, taxable. A temple trust is taking a premise on rent, taxable. A education institute taking a premise on rent, taxable. A hospital taking a premise on rent, taxable. Be very careful. All these are taxable. We have only those three which are exempt. First, renting of residential dwelling for residential purpose, hotel accommodation etc. up to 1000 per day or equivalent, and the third one is vacant land for agriculture. Okay. Now let's talk about hiring. So when you talk about hiring could be of a truck, could be of a bus, could be of any other vehicle. Let's see what's the exemption. If you give a truck on rent to a goods transport agency, GST is not applicable. But if the truck is given to me, GST would be applicable. When you talk about a bus, that is a vehicle which can carry more than 12 passengers, if it is given on rent to a state transport undertaking, then again GST would not be applicable. Simple reason, goods transport agency and state transport undertaking, normally their output is exempt at least to a limited extent. So when you are giving the truck on hire or bus on hire, government has given you an exemption. Third one, to encourage electrically operated vehicles given on rent to local authority. Again, GST would not be applicable. And then one is related to education sector. Say suppose school is providing services of transportation of students, staff and faculty. This school hires a driver. That driver is providing transportation to school. School is charging from the customer. Now the driver has taken a vehicle on rent from my friend Mr. A. So Mr. A is giving a vehicle on hire to the driver who is providing transportation of students, staff and faculty to the school. Mr. A, will he charge GST? The answer is no. Government has given an exemption and it says motor vehicle given on hire to a person who is providing transportation of passenger, of students, staff or faculty to an institution where education is provided up to higher secondary. In that case, obviously school will be covered. GST would not be applicable. So that's about hiring. When we talk about construction service, remember one rule. In case of construction service, all the construction activities are liable to GST. But there are three important entries where government has given an exemption. One, single residential unit except as part of a complex. That means a bungalow construction service, GST is not applicable. But remember, it has to be a pure labor contract. That means it has to be only a service contract. If there is goods involved in that, then you will not be eligible for the exemption. Second one, construction under Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana or housing for all, GST would not be applicable. Again, pure labor contracts. And the third one is to develop infrastructure in rural area for reaching or making electricity available till the farmland. So from the electricity utility plant where the electricity is generated, you build infrastructure, that is infrastructure in the forms of electric poles till the electricity reaches the farmland. For all those construction, government has given an exemption. These are the three services which are exempt relating to construction industry. Then we have an important one. Government related. Yes, very critical. Services provided by government and services provided to government. Let me tell you the general rule. Any service provided by government is exempt. By government, any service is exempt. But any service provided to government is taxable. This is the general rule which we will be following. Now, there can be exceptions to all this. So, any service provided by government is exempt, but there are four limbs which are taxable. Four parts taxable. Which are those four parts? First, speed post, express parcel post, life insurance, agency services provided by Department of Post to any person other than government. To any person other than government. To any person other than government is taxable. That means if these four are provided to government, then it would be exempt. Reason, public player and private player. There is a competition in speed post with courier agency. If public player is given an advantage, in that case, private player will start losing his business. That's why government has said, wherever there is a competition, to provide a level playing field, GST is applicable. Now, first, this is what is taxable. Second, transportation of goods and passengers. Third, service in relation to aircraft or vessel, that is repair activity of aircraft and vessel. Or fourth, any service provided to business entity. So when government is giving services to business entity, taxable under reverse charge mechanism, where business entity would pay the tax directly to government. But say suppose there is a business entity whose registration limit in the preceding financial year is not crossed. In such cases, it is exempt. So if I were to sum up this, government providing services to you, exempt. Government providing service to a business entity whose turnover in the preceding financial year does not exceed registration limit, exempt. Government providing service to a business entity whose registration limit is crossed, taxable under reverse charge mechanism. But don't forget, This exemption which I just told you to business entity up to registration limit, it is not applicable for first three activities, that is speed post 1, transportation of passengers and aircraft or vessel. It is also not applicable for renting of immobile property. So government giving service to a business entity, renting of immobile property, the exemption is not available. Then this became very wide. So government gave another set of exemptions, like any service up to rupees 5,000 provided by government, GST is not applicable. But don't apply this 5,000 when this is speed post, express parcel post, life insurance, agency services provided by Department of Post, or transportation of passengers, or aircraft or vessel related services. So for first three activities, don't apply. Then government providing services to government, again GST is not applicable, but this also does not apply to those first three limbs. However, government providing services on speed post, obviously it is exempt. That benefit is already available. So government to government, only two services are taxable: transportation of goods and passengers, service in relation to aircraft or vessel. Passport, visa, driving license, birth certificate, death certificate, all these are exempt from GST. Service provided to individual farmers for allocation of natural resources, GST is not applicable. On petrol extraction, the share, that is royalty, which is earned by government, again GST is not applicable. Anything which is collected by excess royalty collection contractor on which the main mining leaseholder has already paid the tax, again it is exempt from GST. If I give a long-term lease, I being a government entity where government holds more than 20%, or I being central government or state government, again in such cases GST will not be applicable on upfront payment. See, whenever you give it on long-term lease, now you make two payments: upfront payment, lease rental. Upfront payment exempt, lease rentals which are paid on a monthly or quarterly basis, GST would be applicable. Government has also clarified that upfront payment, even made in installments, will enjoy the exemption. Merchant overtime charges, which is paid on the port, GST is not applicable. Any registration under any law or testing or calibration services for safety check of employees, all that is also exempt from GST. FSSAI providing any services, GST would not be applicable. Any service provided to government being a function which is entrusted under 243G or 243W of the Constitution, like repair of electricity poles or maintenance of garden, where the goods element does not exceed 25%, again that also enjoys an exemption. And any fair price shop or a public distribution system, fair price shop, ration shop, earning commission, GST would not be applicable. So in government related, there are lot of exemptions which are given. Now let's talk about transportation of goods. When we talk about transportation of goods, the first thing which you should understand, there can be various modes: road, rail, vessel, aircraft, inland waterways. 5 modes: road, rail, vessel, aircraft, inland waterways. Transportation of goods by road is exempt except goods transport agency and courier agency. But goods transport agency providing it to an unregistered person is exempt other than specified persons. The specified persons is factory, society, cooperative society, which is covered by RCA. Then GTA providing service to a government department which is required to deduct tax under section 51, and only for that they have taken registration. Again, government has given an exemption in such cases. Thereafter, when we talk about rail, taxable. Airways, India to India, taxable. Within India airways, taxable. Transportation of goods. India to outside India, it is exempt. Outside India to India, that is also exempt in case of aircraft, because the airfare which is from outside to India, that airfare suffers customs. It is added to FOB to arrive at CIF. The government has given an exemption for that. Vessel within India transportation, taxable. India to outside India, exempt. This is increased. Earlier this was till 30th September 2020. Now it is applicable till 30th September 2021. And then we have outside India to India, vessel transportation is taxable. Here vessel operators wanted this to be taxable so that they can take input tax credit on their purchases, and that's why government made it taxable. Then there are some products which are transported through GTA, railways or vessel where GST is not applicable. Like if I were to tell you, say suppose one day morning I was just sitting and having a glass of milk which had salt. Thereafter my mother gave me some food grains, and thereafter I was just reading the newspaper. I heard about all these China, Pakistan, all these fights which go on. I was thinking that in case a war happens, then we'll have to send defense equipment, we'll have to send relief material and some railway equipments as well, organic manure, and then I wore a cotton shirt and then left for the classes. Now whatever I mentioned, all these being transported, GST is not applicable. Like newspaper, milk, salt, food grains, agriculture produce, railway equipment, defense equipments, relief material, organic manure and cotton. All these transported, GST is not applicable. And don't forget one important thing. This benefit is not available for aircraft. It is only for GTA, vessel and railways. And inland waterways. Any transportation through inland waterways, transportation of goods is exempted. GTA has one more important entry. Single consignee up to 750 rupees. GST will not be applicable. Single carriage up to 1500. GST will not be applicable. So this was about transportation of goods. Now when we talk about transportation of passengers. See, transportation of passengers, we have various links. Let me cover different sectors. Say suppose we talk about rail. Now when we talk about rail, AC taxable, non-AC exempt other than first class. If it is non-AC first class, which is there only in Mumbai, non-AC first class, in that case it is taxable. Thereafter we come across airways. Airways obviously taxable, but if a flight is starting or terminating in northeastern states including Bagdogra, then government has given an exemption. Coming to cabs, radio taxi taxable, metered cab exempt, other motor cabs taxable, auto rickshaw exempt, metro monorail exempt, tramway exempt, aerial tramway, cable car, ropeway. These are for tourism. Government has made it taxable. Stage carriage AC taxable, non-AC exempt. Contract carriage AC taxable, contract carriage non-AC exempt if it is used for any purpose other than tourism, charter or hire. If it is used for tourism, charter or hire, then it is taxable. Helicopters, obviously sir, it will be taxable. Inland waterways enjoys an exemption. And don't forget, where government is paying a share of flight ticket in regional connectivity scheme, Udan scheme, Ude Desh Ka Aam Nagrik, in such that scheme where government is paying a fee to airline operators, exemption is available. So this was about transportation of passengers. And don't exempt cruise. Cruise is taxable, but public transportation vessel will be exempt from GST. This was passenger sector. Now we move on to agriculture. Supply of farm labor, exempt. Training of farmers, exempt. Testing of soil, exempt. When we talk about giving a vacant land for rent for agriculture, exempt. Scientific research in the field of agriculture enjoys an exemption. Commission agent, APMC charging any commission, GST is not applicable. Cultivation, harvesting, pruning and all the agriculture related activities are exempt from GST. But it has to be agriculture or agriculture produce? In relation to agriculture or agriculture produce? Agriculture we already discussed. What is agriculture? Now let's try to understand what is agriculture produce. It's the primary produce on which no processing is done or certain minor processing is done which does not change the essential characteristic of the product. Like husk with wheat. Wheat has some layer of husk and then you just take it up, it separates the wheat and husk. In that case, the nature of wheat does not change. Wheat remains same. Such minor processing is exempt from GST. But paddy to rice, rice is a completely different processed product. In such cases, the essential characteristic of the product has changed. In that case, exemption would not be available. That's why paddy to rice is taxable. But for rice, government has given some exemptions. Rice, packing, loading, transportation, which is already there in transportation entry, and thereafter you have unloading, warehousing, storage of rice. GST is not applicable. But commission agent of rice, GST is applicable because in that entry commission agent is missing. Then labeling, repacking, packing, waxing of fruits and vegetables is also exempt from GST. In fact, storage of certain products like copra, that is coconut or jaggery, tea, coffee, unmanufactured tobacco, betel leaves, minor forest produce, all these have been exempted from GST. This was about agriculture. When we move to education, see, when we talk about education, the first thing which you should understand, any service by education institute is normally exempt if it is provided to student, staff and faculty. Now the question is, who is an education institute? Preschool, education up to higher secondary, or degree colleges where you get education as part of a curriculum for obtaining a qualification which is recognized by law. These are education institutes. Then approved vocational training programs covered by National Council for Vocational Training or State Council for Vocational Training. In such cases, GST would not be applicable, but it has to be provided to student, staff and faculty. If it is provided to any person other than student, staff or faculty, then GST would be applicable. Like a particular education institute uses some space and gives it on rent to HDFC Bank for an ATM. In such cases, GST will be applicable because this service provided by education institute is not to student, staff and faculty. Okay. When we talk about the purchase side of an education institute, there are some services which are exempt. Which are those services? Now, I'll try to make you remember this. Be very careful. See this. There was a kid and this kid was 3-year-old. He was crying. The parents got him admitted to a school. Thereafter, he was transported to the school. Kid is still crying. Thereafter, he was hungry. So, canteen services was provided. And you know, when a kid has food, he will spoil everything. So, thereafter, housekeeping services was required. Thereafter, teacher said, when will this kid go? He will go only after his examination. Until that time, school has to take care of his security. Finally, when he goes out of 12th standard, he would be reading online journal and periodical. Now, whatever I mentioned in this, these are the things when purchased by an education institute, GST is not applicable. Admission. First kid was admitted. Then transported. Thereafter catering. Thereafter housekeeping. When will the kid go? After examination. Till that time you have to take care of his security. And after 12th, he will start reading online journal and periodical. This will also be useful for you because there are certain things which are very critical in education sector. When we talk about admission or examination related service, provided to any education institute is exempt. But when you talk about transportation, catering, security services, housekeeping services. These four are exempt for education institute up to higher secondary. That means degree college does not get this exemption on the purchase side. But online journal and periodical is eligible only for degree college. That's why in our story we mentioned that after 12th he starts reading online journal and periodical. So this was about education entry. Don't forget conduct of entrance program. Entrance program again, conduct of entrance exam, GST is not applicable. Industrial training conducted which is approved, again GST will not be applicable. Private industrial training institutes which are approved have been exempted from GST. CBSE, Central Board, it could be any Central Board of Education. Central Board collecting examination fee will be considered as education institute to the extent of that examination fee. For all other activities they are taxable, but to the extent of examination fee they will be regarded as education institute. Now, thereafter we talk about healthcare. Let's see what is there in healthcare and charity. Now, healthcare services provided by three persons is exempt. Authorized medical practitioner, clinical establishment, and third one is paramedics. Remember one thing, where is healthcare provided, that is not important. Healthcare service should be provided by three persons. Authorized medical practitioner, clinical establishment, and paramedic. Now what is healthcare service? Healthcare service is diagnosis, treatment, and care in a recognized system of medicine in India. So if it's an unrecognized system of medicine, then GST would be applicable. And what about ambulance services? Ambulance services provided by any person is exempted from GST. Cosmetic and plastic surgery, if it is a necessity, then it will enjoy an exemption. If it is a luxury, then GST would be applicable on such cases. Thereafter, we also come across preservation of stem cell. Preservation of stem cell enjoys an exemption. Common biomedical waste treatment facility operator providing services to clinical establishment, again GST is exempted. Veterinary clinic also enjoys an exemption. But don't forget, we are not discussing about medicines. Medicines are taxable. But sir, what if medicines and food is given as part of healthcare service? In such cases, composite supply of healthcare service and GST would not be applicable because the main service there is healthcare service. Don't forget this. This comes from a circular. Thereafter, let's talk about charity. When we talk about charity, a charitable trust has to be registered under Section 12AA of Income Tax Act 1961. Only then they can claim some exemptions. Now, what are those exemptions which then can claim? Charitable trust, which is registered under 12AA, carrying on charitable activities is exempt. Now, what is the meaning of charitable activities? Four things covered. Public health, that is care and counseling, family planning, all such cases. Then, education to a person who is aged more than 65 years in rural area, education to orphaned, education to a homeless person, education to prisoners, all such cases. Third is religion, spirituality, yoga, advancement of religion, spirituality, yoga, all Babas covered. And the last one is preservation of wildlife or environment. Again, that is also considered as charitable activity. So these four, any fee charged for these four is exempt. Sir, what about donation which they receive? Donation which they receive, there is no supply for that consideration, GST will not apply. Sir, what if the name of the person is written in that particular premise? Personal name written, CBIC has clarified, no GST. A business name written, it's like an advertisement to that person, GST would be applicable. This is clarified by CBIC. Then, there are some more exemptions like old age home. Old age home charging up to 25,000 per month gives an exemption. If there is a charge more than this, then the entire amount will be liable to GST. rehab professionals, rehabilitation professionals, providing service to central government, state government, hospitals, education institutes, again exemption is available. Plus any association, be it a religious association, trade association, providing service to its members and charging up to 1000 per year, exemption is available. Conduct of religious ceremony, Panditji, GST is not applicable. And what about renting of a precincts of a religious premise? That means there is a religious premise. In that you have hall, you have rooms, you have shops. If you have given that on rent, GST is exempt up to certain limits. Now let me tell you what is taxable. For shop, if you are charging 10,000 or more per month, then it is taxable. For halls, 10,000 or more per day, then it is taxable. For rooms, 1,000 or more per day, then it is taxable. That means below these limits, exemption would be available. So this was about charity and healthcare. Now, coming to an important discussion, RBI, embassy and financial sector. See, any service provided by RBI is exempt from GST. Any service provided to RBI is taxable. But service provided to RBI from outside India in relation to foreign exchange management is exempt from GST. Any service by embassy, exempt. Foreign diplomatic mission. Any service to embassy, taxable, but they get a refund. We learn this in refund chapter. And finally, when we talk about financial sector, interest, there is no GST applicable if it is on loans, deposits, advances. But when we talk about credit card interest, GST is applicable. Interest on delayed payment of consideration for a taxable supply is also liable to GST. Any processing charges, fee collected by banks, all these are liable to GST. Any exchange of foreign currency. Exchange of foreign currency amongst banks and financial institutions with authorized dealers. In that case, GST will not be applicable. But when banks and authorized dealers sell it to general public and charge a commission, obviously GST will be applicable. What about bill discounting? Again, it's a form of interest clearly written in the law that it would be exempt. Now, one important thing. If you swipe a card and swipe a card for up to rupees 2000 per transaction, then the bank charging commission from the place where you have swiped the card, bank charging commission from the place where you have swiped the card, that commission will be exempt from GST. But the swipe of card should be up to 2000 rupees. This was introduced during demonetization in service tax, which is now carried forward to GST. Thereafter, there's another exemption when it comes to business facilitator. Business facilitator to bank or agent of business facilitator to business facilitator for rural area. Opening up a bank account in rural area, exempt. Business correspondent or its agent providing services to bank, again it is exempt. Plus, they providing services to insurance company, again business facilitator providing services to insurance company is again exempt from GST, but that insurance should be for rural area. If it's for urban area, then some are taxable under forward charge, some are taxable under reverse charge, which we will come across in RCM. This was about financial sector. Remember one important point which has been added, any fee charged for basic saving bank deposit account, which is under Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana, any fee charged by the bank, GST would not be applicable. Okay. Then we have about advocate and senior advocate. Advocate, senior advocate, advocate providing service to a person other than business entity, like providing services to you, exempt. Advocate providing services to another advocate, exempt. Advocate providing service to a business entity up to registration limit. The business entity has a turnover up to registration limit in preceding financial year, exempt, but to other business entities taxable under RCM. For senior advocate, all the entries are same except senior advocate to advocate. That exemption is not there. So what's the conclusion? Senior advocate providing services to another advocate. Check whether this advocate's turnover is up to 20 lakh, that is up to registration limit in preceding financial year, or more than that. If it is up to registration limit, then it is exempt. If it is more than registration limit, then this advocate who is taking services from senior advocate has to pay tax under reverse charge mechanism. And all these exemptions are only for legal service. That means if the advocate is providing any other service, then it is taxable. No benefit would be available. Neither it is covered by reverse charge. That would be a simple case of forward charge. Same lines, arbitral tribunal providing services to any person other than business entity, exempt to a business entity. More than registration limit, taxable under RCM to a business entity whose turnover is up to registration limit in preceding financial year, it enjoys an exemption. Now, when we talk about some miscellaneous entry, let me just cover some important entries. Transmission and distribution of electricity enjoys an exemption, but other than transmission and distribution, taxable. Toll charges or annuity which is paid in case of road construction, exemption is available. Business exhibition held outside India, GST is not applicable. A tour to a foreign tourist for a tour wholly outside India, GST is not applicable. What about a housing society charging up to 7,500 per month as maintenance? GST is not applicable. Trade union, no GST for any collection made from members. What about any service where the main service is exempt and then you take a reimbursement as a housing society or as an association which is non-profit? In such cases also GST is not applicable. Non-taxable territory to non-taxable territory, exempt. But this particular exemption is not available in case of vessel operators, that is transportation of goods from outside India to India. This exemption is not available. Non-taxable territory to taxable territory, where the person in taxable territory are you. In such cases, individual with no business or profession, exemption is given. But this exemption is not available for OIDR services, because in such cases, the person who is providing you OIDR service has to take registration in India and pay tax, because you are a non-SSC online recipient. Similarly, non-taxable territory to taxable territory, if it is government, then no GST applicable. Non-taxable territory to a charitable trust registered under 12AA, GST is not applicable. Again, an important entry. Plus, government has also provided exemption to various yojanas. Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana, Jeevan Jyoti Yojana, Aam Aadmi Bima Yojana, Deen Dayal Upadhyay Gramin Kaushalya Yojana, National Skill Development Corporation, any service provided by National Center for Cold Chain Development, service provided by SEBI, IRDA, Employee Provident Fund Organization, ESIC, National Pension System, admin charges for National Pension System, GST, network providing any service is also exempt. But remember, whatever I just said, these providing service is exempt. That means if you provide services to them, all these are taxable. Okay, clear with this? Yes. So this was a sum up of exemptions which you can listen, and with time you will be able to recollect most of it. In the examination hall, when you are there, trust me, you will be able to hear what I have just said. But for that, you have to listen it for 2 to 3 times. See you in the next video.